Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Direct BookMe Podcast, where we bring you the upside of direct bookings. Every episode, we're here to help you understand the marketing, the strategy, and how to secure a better future for your vacation rental business. I'm Carlos.
And I'm Aaron.
Aaron is one of our hosts on our platform, Direct BookMe. So let's get into it. All right, Aaron, I got a question for you. What do you think the difference is between occupancy in January versus, let's say, summertime, July, for the average vacation rental?
Well, I'm just going to guess it's pretty significant.
I'll tell you this. It's around 40% in January, and then it jumps significantly to close to 70% in July. That's a big swing.
Ouch. Yeah. So basically, peak season, we can call it about 4 months or so, is generating the majority of annual revenue for most operators.
Yeah, and you live this. I mean, you're in an area where this is highly affected, and about 60% of annual revenue from one third of the year, which means around 8 months. That's where the opportunity is. That's what separates operators who are just surviving from the ones who actually build sustainable businesses.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I do live it. We've got a peak summertime season with a lakefront condo being in the Midwest, and so you see a window open in April or May, and you see that window close pretty drastically in August. And so we're going to talk about today how to fill some of those empty nights when you get to that off season. For me, that's around August to March. There's a couple things
So
you can do with strategies, just dynamic pricing, and here's the big one: the guest retention piece. I think is what helps us the most.
definitely, I mean, because here's the thing that most people miss. The operators who master this stuff can regain about 40% of that lost revenue. So let's break down exactly how.
Yeah, let's start with the reality check. And the reality is for a lot of operators, especially in seasonal markets like myself, the off season is just it's brutal, it's painful. You're watching your calendar sit empty, the bills keep coming, and you're wondering why you got into this business. I know I spend a good part of October, November just trying to figure out advertising strategies, what can I do? Are there guests I can reach back out to? So it's definitely a time where you really question what you're doing and if you're doing the right things.
Definitely right. I can imagine. And the math makes it worse when you actually look at it. I mean, let's say you've got a property earning hovering $200 a night, and you're around 90% occupancy during peak season. That's 120 nights and about $20,000. But the other 245 nights, maybe you're getting $120 a night and half the occupancy. That's hovering around 14,000 revenue.
Yeah, so I mean, if you do the quick math there, peak season is doing almost 60% or so of your annual revenue in just a third of the year, so quite a bit.
Definitely, and in extreme markets like back home in Florida, you might see around 85% occupancy in March, and then it drops by October. Coastal towns swing from 70% in summer to below 40% in winter.
Yeah, but I think like there is some good news from the data that we're looking at. If you look at some of the recent Air DNA data, it's showing that shoulder seasons are actually expanding. So travelers are increasingly looking for value outside of traditional peak windows. And I'm seeing that guest travel for holidays and things during the winter and things like that. So definitely think that data that there's some validity behind that data that Air DNA is talking about.
And get this, I mean, January of 2025 posted about a 7% year over year occupancy increase. That's the first January gain since 2021. So there is demand. The question is whether operators are positioned to capture it.
Yeah, and let's talk about what the biggest lever is for off-season revenue, and I think that is midterm rentals, which I know is definitely a strategy I've started exploring, and lots of hosts are starting to explore now as well.
Definitely, I agree with you. It's a game changer. Monthly stays of 30 or more. You're trading a lower nightly rate for guaranteed occupancy, way less turnover, and the cash flow is pretty much predictable.
Yep, and there's specific demographics actively looking for this when you're thinking about snowbirds. And by the way, 87% of Canada's 100,000 member Snowbird Association plans U.S. travel every year. Travel nurses on 13-week assignments with housing with stipends of $700 to upwards of $3,000 a month. Flexcation is a real thing. Remote workers wanting to escape winter. Corporate relocation is a real thing. People moving all over the country all the time and needing furnished housing for 1 to 6 months. So the demand is there and it's growing as well.
Yeah, Furnish Finder is, I mean, they're dominating. They've got over 300,000 listings, average stays over 90 days, and here's what's crazy: they charge landlords just about $200 a year with no booking fees. Compare that to losing 15% to Airbnb on every single booking.
Yeah, and what's the typical discount for something like a monthly stay?
So discount, say 25 to 50% off your nightly rate is standard. The sweet spot though seems to be 30 to 40. And even to those discounts, a fully occupied slow month typically generates more total revenue than sporadic nightly bookings would.
Yeah, exactly. And because an empty night earns $0.
Yeah, plus you're saving on turnover costs, the cleaning, you got the laundry, the wear and tear, in the property. I mean, a 2 month snowbird booking might be your best revenue from, from a short term rental, as far as revenue goes, and you factor everything in.
Yeah, absolutely. I know like one of the biggest struggles we have in the off season is like you can get some of those weekend bookings, but constant turnover, you're paying 4 cleaning fees a month instead of one. So it's definitely easier to get somebody in there for a month and have a little bit longer term stay all around. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit though about pricing because this is where a lot of the operators are leaving serious money on the table. Static pricing, which is one rate for every night, is basically playing the game on hard mode for no reason at all.
Yeah, and I love how one industry expert puts it. Static pricing is trying to win a car race with a horse and a buggy. I love that.
Yeah.
And the data backs it up. Properties using dynamic pricing earn 10 to 40% more, and then those using flat rates.
Yeah, 10 to 40% is a massive range, but even at the low end, you're talking real money.
Yeah, AirDNA specifically reports an increase of about 10% from dynamic pricing, and hosts adopting these tools for the first time typically see occupancy increases of up to 30% combined, with average daily rate boost from 10 to 20% within the first year.
And how does that actually work? So for listeners who haven't used these tools yet, how do you use that pragmatically?
So the algorithm analyzes supply and demand signals, competitor rates, local events, day of week patterns, and how far out the booking is. Seasonal trends, whatever's going on in your area. And then they adjust your rates automatically, usually recalculating about every 24 hours.
Okay, so let's break down like the main tools because there's a few big players that it sounds like are really leading this.
Yeah, there definitely is. I mean, Price Labs is probably the most popular that comes to mind. I mean, they've got hovering 600,000 listings, 150 plus countries. They use a rule-based engine overlaid on market data. Flat pricing starting at 19.99 a month just for one listing, and then scaling down for bigger portfolios. It's great for analytical hosts who really want to have control, have their feet in the sand. But there's a learning curve, like anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one I hear about is beyond pricing quite a bit. That's another one, a big one, right?
Yeah, they're pretty huge. Just around 340,000 listings. Their unique angle is using a real-time consumer search behavior as their primary demand signal. They use a commission model, about 1.5% of booking revenue instead of upfront fees. So you're only paying when you're basically making money.
Yeah, and then another one, Wheelhouse is interesting. I think I hear that just because of the different options that they give that I hear users like.
Yeah, I've come across them. Three strategy modes they use: rules based, data driven, or a hybrid. They analyze about 10 billion data points daily, available at either 1% of the revenue or 19.99 a month per listing. And good for smaller operators who just want to be flexible.
Yeah, and so I mean, it sounds like there's a ton of different options out there for dynamic pricing. But I think the important thing to remember is that just dynamic pricing alone, a tool there doesn't guarantee results. You can't necessarily just set it and forget it with a pricing tool.
Yeah, you definitely. I mean, like anything else, you got to have your hands on and be there and put the work in. I mean, and this is the biggest mistake. Price Labs did audits for over 100 accounts and found that hosts who never revisit their base price after initial setup consistently underperform. One expert I heard compared dynamic pricing tools to an F1 car. Powerful, but you need to know how to drive it, and it's true. You need to get in there and get your hands dirty.
Yeah. And what is the right cadence? Because I feel like that's probably what a lot of hosts struggle with and why they never go back and revisit it.
Yeah, probably. I mean, weekly calendar reviews, monthly base price reassessments, quarterly strategy adjustments, and immediate manual overrides. When you see a suddenly announced event in your area, the algorithms might lag on detecting it. A concert gets announced for your market, and don't wait for the algorithm to catch up. You got to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the other common mistakes I think users would be interested in?
Pricing. I see pricing being too high in low season. And remember, an empty night, like you mentioned earlier, and zero.
Yeah.
Ignoring competitor data, it's in a big one. Failing to manage orphan days. Those awkward 1 or 2 night gaps between reservations. Tools can automatically discount those by 10 to 30% to fill them. And then the weekend pricing. Optimization alone can boost your average daily rate by up to 15%.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the biggest thing that hosts have to get past sometimes is that a you know a a less of a loss is still a win than a complete loss, right? So you
Correct,
can lose.
yes.
Do
You're in
you
the
want
red list.
right? Do you want to lose $150 or do you want to lose $50, right? So
Yeah.
even if you're a zero booking night or empty night is zero booking, and so you got to get past that mindset of like I don't want to book for super low price.
Yeah.
All right. So here's like one thing, just switching gears a little bit here. Here's the stat that I think blew my mind when I saw it. Like and it's around hotels. Hotel loyalty members account for almost 53% of occupied room nights at major change. And membership grew almost 15% last year to over 675 million members.
Wow, that's insane. And what do most vacation rental operators have for a repeat guest strategy?
Basically nothing. I know very few um, successful hosts that don't have a strategy. Most guests don't have a repeat guest, or most hosts don't have a repeat strategy.
Yeah, I've thought about that. I mean, it's definitely something that needs to be implemented. And here's a number that should make everyone pause. I mean, the industry collectively pays more than $1 billion per year in OTA commissions on repeat guests. And then you got returning customers who rebook through Airbnb and Vrbo, simply because the host never heard, the host never offered a direct alternative.
Yeah, so I mean, over $1 billion in fees on people who already stayed with you and presumably liked it and probably gave you good reviews if you're a good host.
Yeah, it's the single most expensive inefficiency in the short-term rental business model, and the economics of retention are clear. They're there. Bain and Company research shows acquiring a new customer costs about 5 to times more than retaining an existing one. And then you got a 5% increase on retention boost profitability by 25 to 95%.
Yeah, and I think repeat guests are just better in general, right?
Yeah, so much better that they spend around 22% more and stay about 28% longer. They're less price sensitive, spending 67% more than non-loyal guests. They leave better reviews. And here's a big one. Direct and repeat bookings have about an 18% cancellation rate compared to around 50% for OTA bookings.
Yeah, just the drastic number difference there is huge. 50% cancellation rate on OTA bookings versus 18% on direct. That alone is worth focusing on.
Give me a second, Aaron. Let me just close my blinds. This is my first time recording here, and the
Sure.
sun is kind of like,
All good.
yeah, let me just. I was afraid I wasn't going to have enough light, but let me just. I have too much light now.
No, all good.
All right, hold on. Okay. All right, that is better. Let me turn this on. Okay, That's a little that's better. And then she can she can edit that. Okay. All right. Here we go. And each 5-star review drives close to 3% an increase in gross booking value, and about a 5% jump in future bookings the following year. I mean, reviews they're gold. They're everything.
Yeah, and so like to make it real, what does a good retention strategy actually look like for successful hosts?
And it starts with communication, right? We always say communication, 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 and most hosts are lacking there. TouchStay did a study, and they found 2/3 of guests receive 1 to 2 or 0 communications during their entire stay. Less than half feel well looked after. You know?
Yeah, and people are different and prefer different communication methods and cadence. So what's the right sequence generally?
So booking confirmation within 5 minutes. You have to let the guests know, hey, you're confirmed. You're gonna be staying here. Let them know, let them feel like their trip is booked and set in stone. And then pre-trip preparation 3 days prior check-in. And then a mid-stay check-in on day two once you're there. Just kind of pop in and say, hey guys. And then review request 24 hours after checkout. To me, that is huge. And then offer a flash rebook offer 10 hours after checkout while you're still fresh in their mind, while you're still there, fresh in their head. And then a convert to direct email explaining how they'll save by booking direct next time. Uh, and this is also great. An anniversary reminder at 11 months. And a win back campaign at 9 months with an expiring discount.
Definitely make it flashy. Remind them that you're still out there, and get that good guest back at your place. When we do the return, when you do like the return stays, what's the standard discount for someone like that?
I'd say about 10% is the norm, and here's why the math works great. I mean, you're saving 15% on the OTA commission just by booking direct. So you go ahead and you offer that 10% discount to the guest, and you still net about 5% more per booking than you would have if you have gone through Airbnb.
Yeah, it's a win all around. The guest saves money, you make a little bit more money, and everyone wins except the platform, which is great.
Yeah, right. And top performers using these strategies are seeing incredible results. I saw Boostly case studies show operators reaching 55 to 90% direct bookings and to 60% repeat guest rates.
Definitely. Now, everything we just talked about with retention, it all requires one thing, and that's guest contact information. And Airbnb made that a little bit harder with their May 2025 off platform policy. Is that right?
Yeah, they did. You're absolutely right. I mean, you can no longer solicit email addresses or phone numbers through their Airbnb messaging. I mean, no external website links and messages. No encouraging guests to move bookings off the platform.
But there's still compliant ways to do this, right, for hosts?
Yeah. First, Vrbo, they still share guest phone numbers and email addresses after the confirmation is made for the booking. So you have the data, and second, physical and property marketing is totally permitted. I mean, you can leave your brand inside the house, whether it be your business cards, signage with your direct booking website. I've seen QR codes too, that lead to information. I mean, there's tons of things out there to get yourself out there while the guest is there, and that's all great. That's all fine and dandy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's also the Wi-Fi capture that I've heard of, which is probably the most powerful tool that I've seen.
Oh yeah, yes, I have heard this, and StayFi is the biggest player. I mean, they've deployed, I think, about 80,000 vacation rental properties that they're in, and they create a branded Wi-Fi splash page that collects emails, verified emails, from every guest who connects, not just primary booker, but everyone who uses the Wi-Fi. I mean, that's key. That's great.
Yeah, and this is compliant too because the guest is voluntarily providing their email access to Wi-Fi.
Exactly. It's consent based and complying with Airbnb's policies and regulations. The results are impressive. I mean, one operator, Heirloom, collected around 50,000 emails in 6 months and generated around $35,000 in direct repeat bookings. Another one from 0 to 30% direct bookings within 18 months, just using the Wi-Fi capture alone.
Yeah, what's the ROI on email marketing to that database?
Well, It's around 36 to 45 for every $1 spent, according to campaign monitor data. And that's insane ROI.
Yeah, and so putting it all together, how do we think about tying that into like the off-season strategy that we're talking about?
Well, three ways. First, commission savings of 10 to 15% on direct bookings. Create margin for competitive off-season pricing or return guest discounts. And then second, direct channels allow unlimited professional flexibility. Stay 7 nights, pay for five, type of package. A bundled local experience, a flash sale that the OTA platforms either restrict or charge extra for. Um, and third, owning that guest database enables proactive seasonal outreach. I mean, it's about owning the information and then that host guest relationship.
Yeah, and I think that's the key piece. You can actually reach out to past guests and invite them back. I know I've had personal experience with following up with folks, and even just reaching out and saying in the off season, you booked for 2 days. Do you want to have a third night for half the price, right? And trying to extend that stay and building that relationship with the client.
Yeah, you definitely know. And then you can send an email 11 months after a guest stay. I mean, your favorite dates are coming up, and here's 10% off to book direct.
Yep.
That converts at rates far exceeding cold acquisition. And about 65% of vacation rental operators are already using special offers just to incentivize those direct bookings. That's nearly two-thirds cited, driving direct bookings as their top goal for 2025.
Yeah, just amazing opportunity out there for host to seize. It's out there for the taking. So, all right. So just bringing this all together, we've covered quite a bit today. Off-season pivots. We talked about dynamic pricing and guest retention. What do you feel like the key takeaways are for hosts today?
So definitely dynamic pricing is no longer an option. You definitely need to have it. That 10 to 40% revenue lift is a real thing. 60% of operators have already adopted these tools. So static pricing is competitive. Is definitely a liability now.
Yep. And then I think second, midterm rentals transform the off-season calculus. When you think about the snowbirds, the travel nurses, the remote workers, that growing population of these midterm renters, they're actively seeking winter housing. And when you can convert those to empty months, it's guaranteed occupancy.
Yeah, and this is a big one. Guest retention through direct booking is the industry's largest arbitrage opportunity. I mean, you got hotels, they get about 50% of their occupancy from loyalty members. I mean, think about it. Keep them coming back.
Yep.
Most vacation rentals have zero retention infrastructure. That gap represents billions in uncaptured value, and it needs to be addressed.
100%. And the most actionable insight, I think, is pretty simple. Install the branded Wi Fi capture, send a structured post stay email sequence, offer that 10% or so return discount for direct bookings. Doing that, you recover more per booking than you spend on the discount. And you're building a database that compounds and snowballs in value with every guest over time.
Yeah, and the operators who figure this out are the ones who stop relying on peak season alone. They're building businesses that actually work year round, and they're keeping 10 to 15% more of every booking because they're not handing it over to those big OTAs.
Yep, that is the direct booking advantage. So, all right, thanks for tuning in, everyone. If this episode helped you think differently about off-season revenue, share it with someone who needs to hear it.
Yeah, definitely. And if you want help building your direct booking infrastructure, you know where to find us. Until next time, thanks for having us. Take care, guys.